Hello guys, so this is lesson 3 of Financial Accounting and Reporting ACC 111. So this is for ULOc. So in this video or in this lesson, the big picture and focus is ULOc, wherein you are expected to identify the fundamental concepts and principles in accounting. So let us start. So, pag sinabi natin fundamental concepts class, ito yung mga principles or mga assumptions na meron tayo in accounting. So, ibig sabihin, ganito tayo mag-isip, no? Ganito ang treatment natin sa mga transactions or ganitong way natin ina-account ang transaction because of this basic or fundamental concepts that we have in mind. No? So, ito yung nagiging guiding principle natin or based sa mga fundamental concepts na to, nagiging basis siya kung paano natin iti-treat or i-account ang ating mga transactions. Because again, these are assumptions, no? Yung mga paniniwala natin, mga accountant, in reporting or in recording transactions of the business. So basically, there are 4 fundamental concepts in accounting. So the first one is the entity concept, or we also term it as the business entity concept. So in this concept, what we believe is that an accounting entity is an organization or a section of an organization that stands apart from other organizations and individuals as a separate economic unit. So ang ibig sabihin nito, class, na ang business ay hindi ang owner. And ang owner ay hindi ang business. So, ibig sabihin, the business and the owner are two different, distinct economic units. So that this concept or this assumption here will guide us, accountants, na dapat hindi natin i-mix up ang mga transactions na personal ng owner sa kanyang business. So, we cannot account, we cannot include personal transactions of the owner sa business na mga transactions. Say, for example, pag sinabing yung owner nag-invest ng 100,000 sa kanyang business. So, take note that 100,000 now does not belong to the owner, but rather it belongs na to the business. Kasi, ininvest na ng owner sa business. So, in case si owner kukuha ng 10,000 kasi may paggagamitan siyang personal, so ang mangyayari, yung 10,000 na kinuha ni owner ay i-consider natin as withdrawal ng owner. So, you have to account for that because, again, the business is not the owner and the owner is not the business. They are separate and distinct economic unit. So, yan yung common mistake ng mga negosyante, especially yung mga small businessman, na usually, yan yung violation na nami-mix up yung personal na mga transaction sa business na transaction. So, dito sa accounting, ang paniniwala natin na dapat i-separate natin ang pag-account ng personal saka ng business na mga transactions. Kasi nga, yung business at ang owner ay separate and distinct from each other. Now, they are considered different economic unit. So, I hope naintindihan yun ang konsepto ng entity or business entity. So, the second fundamental concept is going concern concept. So, ito naman, this means that the business has indefinite life. So, ibig sabihin, class, no, in accounting, we assume that once a business is established, we have this assumption that it will continue to operate indefinitely unless there are circumstances that will tell us na ay hindi na makaka-operate indefinitely yung business. Like for example, meron ng closure order yung government kasi may violation na ginawa yung business. So in that case, we cannot already see the business as going concern. But kapag wala naman, no, walang mga circumstances or walang mga sitwasyon, no, na nagsasabi sa atin na hindi na going concern ang business, so we really assume that the business will continue to operate. So this concept also allows accountant, no, to record accounts receivable or accounts payable. Kasi we are thinking that the next day or the next period, we will be collecting pa the accounts receivable or we will be paying pa the accounts payable. So I hope that is clear, no, the going concern concept. So the third one is the periodicity concept or the time period concept. So in this concept, no, we assume, no, and we believe that the entity's life can be meaningfully subdivided into equal time periods for reporting purposes. So, di ba, parang hindi naman yata maganda na you will know na lang kung ano ang status ng business mo kung magko-close ka na. Meaning, ay, wala, lugi ka na. So, meaning I just have to close my business. So, then you can conclude that ay, lugi talaga ako. Pero hindi mo alam kung kailan ba nagsimula yung loss mo. Kasi nga, there's no time period, no? Walang set up na periodicity or time period kung kailan ka magre-report. So, that is the reason why we have this assumption or concept, no, na we have to subdivide the life of the business into time period. Kasi sabi natin, di ba, going concern siya. So, alangan naman mag-report ka yung magko-close na ngayon business. So, it will not be very practical. And we know for a fact that businessmen or mga owners or mga managers would need timely information for them to be able to manage the affairs of the business very well. Okay, so take note, class, that time period, usually ito 1 year. Bakit siya 1 year? Kasi itinaon din sa compliance, no, usual compliance sa mga government offices. Like, for example, yung tax. Even if you pay it on a quarterly basis, but still, no, ang computation niya na sa isang taon ay annual yan, no? So, good for 1 year yan talaga. So, it just happened that you're paying it an installment every quarter. Para pagdating ng isang taon or annual, konti na lang, no? Or konti na lang yung babayaran mo para hindi ka ma-shock sa babayaran mo na tax. So, you do installment na payment of your taxes. Okay? So, usually 1 year yan, and meron tayong mga time periods na sinusunod. No? We can say that 1 year period can be following a calendar year. So, pag sinabing calendar year, mag-start ka ng January, mag-end ka ng December. Meron din namang fiscal year. So, yung fiscal year, isang taon din, 12 months din. Kaso lang, magsa-start siya any month of the year except lang ng January. So, example, ang time period niya ay nag-start ng February. So, nag-start siya ng February 1, ibig sabihin, mag-i-end siya ng January 31. No? So that the 12 months na period ay makompleto na isang buong taon. And there's another one, yung natural business year, wherein kino-consider lang natin kailan ba yung peak season and kailan ba yung slackest season ng company. But still, that is a period of 1 year pa rin. So that is time period or the periodicity concept in accounting. Okay. Lastly, we have the stable monetary unit. So what is this stable monetary unit? So it says here the transaction must be measured and recorded in terms of denomination of a country. So in our case, our monetary unit is of course Philippine peso. So we expect that the financial statements that are prepared in the Philippines are presented in terms of Philippine peso kasi that is our common denomination in the Philippines. So, in this particular concept or assumption, no, actually this or it has two parts, no, aside from the common or common na denomination na dapat gamitin. Another thing is yung tinatawag na stable, no? Stability of the monetary unit. So in the Philippines, we know for a fact that hindi talaga stable yung peso value natin. Kasi from time to time, di ba, yung conversion ng peso to dollars, nagkakaiba-iba. For example, today 50, next day 48, next day 52 ulit. So, meaning it fluctuates. But in accounting, we assume, no, that we believe, no, ito yung paniniwala natin na ang ating peso ay stable. So that is the reason why we do not consider purchasing power of your peso. So we just take your piso as piso without considering kung magkano ba yung purchasing power niya. So that is stable na monetary unit. Okay, so next we proceed to the criteria for general acceptance of an accounting principle. So, sabi natin, financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP, no? Or should be prepared in accordance with GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles. So, ano bang GAAP na ito, no? So these are a set of guidelines and procedures that constitute acceptable accounting practices. So take note, no, in the Philippines, ano yung GAAP na sinusunod natin? So we have the PAS, or the Philippine Accounting Standards, and we have the PFRS, the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. And meron din tayong mga interpretations, no? Yung mga inisyo ng PIC or the Philippine Interpretations Committee. So, kasama yan sa kino-consider natin as GAAP or Generally Accepted Accounting Principles in the Philippines. So, itong GAAP na to, they will be the guide they will serve as a guide in the preparation of the financial statements. Okay, so what are the criteria, no, for an accounting principle to become generally accepted? So first is you have this, dapat meron siyang or dapat yung accounting principle na yun or principle na yun should have relevance or should be relevant. No, it should have or a principle, no, has relevance to the extent that it the results in the information that is meaningful and useful to those who need to know something about certain organization. So, pag sinabing relevance or kanang relevant, so dapat it can change, right? It can alter the perception of a person or a stakeholder to a certain information given. So, for example, ganito, pag masasabi natin that there is relevance kapag maka-influence siya ng decision. So, if maka-change ng decision, like for example, you are already decided na to purchase, for example, a certain model of cell phone. But then, here comes your friend, for example, na mayroon siya nga, ay hala, kuan man na, kanang dali, raman na malubat, no? So, ikaw, biska decided na ka nga, mapalit ka ito nga cellphone, ni-withdraw na lang kanina ka, ay, di na lang ko muday yun. So, meaning, the information nga gi-feed sa imua, sa imong friend, is considered relevant. Why? Because it has changed your perception and eventually, it has changed your decision. So, that is, we can say that that information that you have received from your friend is relevant because it has changed your perception and your decision in buying or that particular model of phone. Okay, so next we have this, dapat the accounting principle, it should be objective, no? So a principle has objectivity to the extent that the resulting information is not influenced by the personal bias or judgment of those who furnished it. So, pag sinabing objectivity, so dapat hindi bias, no? Dapat hindi mo lang perception or hindi mo lang opinion, no? It should be something that can be verified. So, in accounting, no, dapat objective ka. So, hindi pwede na basta ka na lang mag-record, for example, ng transaction na wala kang basis. So, it should have a source document na pagbabasihan mo para sa iyong pag-record ng transaction. So, it should not be based on your personal bias or judgment. Dapat meron kang concrete basis. Like, for example, ay, meron akong sales. Sales ko ay 5,000. So, you should have something to prove that there is indeed sales so that anybody who wish to examine the books would really verify na yan, na meron talagang sales na 5,000 kasi merong resibo na nakita. So, which is the document or the source document. Then, next would be, for an accounting principle to be generally accepted, the principle should have feasibility. So, a principle has feasibility to the extent that it can be implemented without undue complexity or cost. So, dapat, you can just, or it is practical, to implement the principle. Then, let's proceed to the basic principles in accounting. So, first is we have objectivity. So, objectivity principle, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina that accounting record and statement should be based on the most reliable data available so that they will be as accurate as possible. So, hindi pwedeng haka-haka lang. So, dapat meron ka talagang concrete basis of the things or the transactions that you're going to record. In accounting, you do not record unless there are proofs. Like for example, sabi niya ay bumili ng office supplies for example. So, how will we know na totoo yun na may binili talaga? So, through source document. So, hanapin mo yung OR or official receipt. No? As proof na meron talagang biniling office supplies. Second principle is historical cost. So, this principle states that acquired assets should be recorded at their actual cost and not at what management thinks they are worth as at reporting date. So, this allows accountants to record transactions based on their original or actual cost when they purchased them. Like for example, when you purchase an equipment 5 years ago, it cost you 20,000. So, in the records of the company, in the record in the books of the business, that equipment will be reported at 20,000, no? Cost at 20,000. But of course, you know that it will be reduced by its accumulated depreciation. But ang historical cost mag-reflect talaga doon. So that is the historical cost principle. Although, there is already, no, kanang bago na principle ginasunod kanang sa fair value na accounting, wherein companies now are already allowed, no, which is conflicting to this principle, kasi companies now are already allowed to report, no, the value of the asset, no, kung magkano na sila worth today. So, that's fair value na accounting. So, example, no, you purchased 5 years ago a lot which is worth 20,000 pesos. So, if you're following historical cost, in your books, you'll be recording land at 20,000. However, there is now a new method, no, yung tinatawag na revaluation model, no, or method, wherein companies now or businesses now are allowed to report their assets at their current cost, no, using the revaluation model. So, what will happen? Like, di ba, 5 years ago, that was purchased 20,000. Say, for example, in that land, no, in that lot, marami na improvement na nangyari so that it increased its value. So, say for example, ngayon, yung 20,000 mo 5 years ago, the current cost now is 100,000. So, the revaluation model allows companies na to record transactions at 100,000 or to restate, no, to revalue your asset at 100,000, which is the current price now. But again, that is conflicting to this historical cost. But although it is conflicting, still it is an acceptable, no, na practice, no, in accounting. Kasi meron namang option sa pag-record ng equipment or ng asset or ng current asset ang entity. Whether to follow cost model or yung revaluation model na nga sinasabi ko. So, number 3 is the revenue recognition principle. So, here, revenue is to be recognized in the accounting period when goods are delivered or services are rendered or performed. So, ito. This will tell us when to report or when to record income or revenue. So, sabi dito, revenue daw will be considered na, no, as income or will be recognized na in the accounting period kung kailan na-deliver na-deliver na ang goods or services, no, or na-deliver na ang goods or na-render na or na-perform na ang services. So, we are actually following here accrual accounting that kahit na hindi mo pa na-receive yung payment, basta kay naka-deliver na ka sa goods or naka-perform na ka ng service, then you have to report already, you have to recognize already your revenue or income. Next is the expense recognition principle. So, ito naman siya, na in this principle, this will tell us when to record expenses. So, ano sabi dito? Expenses that should be recognized in the accounting period in which goods or services are used up to produce revenue and not when the entity pays for the goods and services. So, still this follows the accrual accounting kasi even if hindi mo pa binayaran yung expense or yung item na yan, as long as it's already consumed, yung term niya is kapag na-incur mo na, incur, I-N-C-U-R, kapag na-incur mo na, you have to report it as expense, even if hindi mo pa siya binayaran. Now, pag sinabing incur, kailan ba na-i-incur na ang isang expense? So, we incur the expense when we consume it. Kung nag-expire na siya, pwede rin kung nag-expire na siya. So, that's when you have already incurred the expense. Pwede rin naman na basta naka-benefit ka na, nagamit mo na. So, that is when your expense is already incurred. And once incurred again, even if hindi pa bayad, you have to report that already as expense. Then next would be number 5, yung adequate disclosure. So, adequate disclosure requires that all relevant information that would affect the user's understanding and assessment of the accounting entity be disclosed in the financial statement. So, it has something to do with the completeness of your report, Kasi there are non-quantitative na information which are relevant and are material para maging buo yung understanding and perception ng users of information about the entity as a whole. Like, there are items that you have to disclose in the notes to financial statements. Kasi, hindi mo man siya malagay doon sa face ng financial statements, dapat nakasulat siya doon sa notes. Kasi, importante yun para mas maintindihan ng user ang financial statements and hindi siya ma-mislead. Like, for example, yung negosyo mo or yung business mo is nagtitinda ng fireworks, for example, So, for example, as of December 31, nag-inventory ka na nag-count ka, so meron ka pang 10,000 worth of firecrackers, for example. So, that was December 31, nag-inventory ka, so okay, 10,000 yung inventory ko. Now, pagdating ng January 1, minalas ka at nasunog yung bodega mo. So, naabo, nag-New Year ang mga pabuto, ang mga firecrackers. So, in short, nahurot ng imo ang tinda. So, unsa may buhaton? Pwede ra ba nga may ginragyapon ka i-report ra to nimo tong 10,000 inventory? What will happen? Now, since there is what we call subsequent event, na nahitabo after sa date sa imo ang report, di ba? Imong date sa imong report is December 31. So, nahitabo atong January 1. Pero katong December 31, ang ihap nimo sa imong inventory, 10,000 pesos yun. So, what are you going to do? The principle of adequate disclosure na tells us that dapat magbutang ka dito og note, or magbutang ka sa notes of financial statement na ang inventory nimo nga 10,000 abunan na, no? Or nasunog na because of the nahitabo atong January 1. No? On the face of your balance sheet, na dito ang 10,000, pero in the notes of financial statements, sulat nimo dito nga, kaning 10,000 inventory, wala na ni siya because nasunog ang among bodega atong January 1. So that is adequate disclosure para hindi ma-mislead yung mga users of information. So you have to be transparent, and as much as possible, you include all information that you think would affect the understanding of the user sa financial statements. And maka-apekto po sa iyang assessment sa business entity. Okay, next we have the principle of materiality. So, pag sinabing material, that's another term in accounting. Pag sinabi natin sa science na material, di ba, we're material, or we are thinking of siguro things. But in accounting, pag sinabi natin material, ibig sabihin nun, that is something of importance. Meron siya, para bang, something of value, something which is very significant. So, that's material. So, when we say principle of materiality, ano naman ito, no? So, sabi niya dito, materiality now depends on the size and the nature of an item judged in a particular circumstances of its omission. So, sometimes, we can say that an item is material or not. So, my example is this. My usual example is this. So, how will we know if the item is material or not? Sabi niya dito, materiality is dependent on the size and the nature. And take note, when we talk about size here, size would be relevant, Hindi siya absolute na value. Like, for example, just to illustrate the concept of materiality, say for example, you're walking in the street and then suddenly, nakakita ka og piso, Ang piso nasa tunga sa kalsada, nag-shining, Ano yung buhaton? So, if wala kay kwarta, most probably, katong piso, imo gitong duulon, imo gitong kuhaon sa tunga sa kalsada, Ngayon man, because you think that piso is of significant, or meron siyang significant sa'yo. Importante siya sa'yo kasi wala mga kwarta. So, may nalang makapiso ka. Pampalit o suit or sometimes nagbaktas ka. But, it would be different kapag meron kang pera. So, if you have lots of money in your pocket, that piso na mo nakitaan sa tunga sa kalsada will not be material. Dili na nimo tagaan og panahon. Nga naman, ko'y kwarta. So, that piso will not matter to me because I have money. So, you see, materiality will depend on the size, but take note, it's not absolute size. It is relative. See, for example, 10,000 is very relevant to me or very material to me. That's very big amount. But if you are going to relate it to Manny Pacquiao, for example, di ba Manny Pacquiao is a billionaire. So if you're going to relate 10,000 pesos to Manny Pacquiao, wow, sinsilyura na. So meaning, 10,000 may be material to me, but 10,000 is not material to Manny Pacquiao. So you see again, materiality is relative in terms of size. It depends on kung kinsa imuhang ginaistoryahan. Kasi it's not absolute value talaga. In a business, for example, if the business is worth, for example, the total assets of the business is 100,000 lang, and then mingon ka nga, hala, nawala ang 20,000. So that is very material. But pag mingon ka the total assets of the company is in billions, pag mingon ka 20,000, that's not very material na. So you see, materiality is relative in terms of size. However, take note that materiality also will depend on the nature, no? Magdepende sa nature kasi naay mga items nga bisan pa og gamay ra og value, no, gamay ra ang peso value, but because of its nature, significant gid siya. Sa example, kung naay nanguha ang empleyado, bisan pag 100 pesos ra na siya, that is very material. Why? Because the act of stealing the money is very material. So, hindi mo pwede mapalampas ang pagpangawat. So, the act itself, the nature of the activity is considered material. So, regardless of the amount, we have to look, or you have to take it, bugat or makonsider nimo siya nga material because of the nature of what he did, or what that employee did, and that is nag-steal siya og kwarta. So bisan pag 100 ra na kay basin og 100 pa na karon, pero kung dili nimo siya i-big deal, kung dili nimo siya tagag-pagtagad, in the future, ibang 100 pesos, may muna ng 100,000. Or may muna ng millions, for example. So, you do not tolerate that. So, that is considered very material. So, I hope you understand the concept of materiality. So, pag sinabing material in accounting, something that is of significance, no? So, kuan siya? Material siya, meaning, it would involve, it will really affect the business as a whole. Kasi, ano man siya, kanang of significant value man siya, or of significant in nature. So that is materiality. So number 7 is consistency principle. So the firms, in this principle, the firm should use the same accounting method from period to period to achieve comparability over time within a single enterprises. So this principle suggests that dapat, kung unsay mong gibuhat nga accounting method karon nga period, dapat you have to be consistent, gamiton gyapon to nimo siya in the next period so that you can achieve comparability. However, changes are permitted, if justifiable. And what you have to do is you just have to disclose it in the financial statement. So what is important here is that you can change your method for as long as the change can promote better understanding, better presentation of your financial statements. And you have to disclose that. You have to state that in the notes of financial statement, Dapat nakasulat dito kung unsa may nahitabo nga changes para ma-aware ang mga users of financial statement nga dili di ay comparable tong last year sa this year nga mga figures because of the change in the accounting method used by the business. So that is consistency. Okay, so that will be all for this lesson. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free to ask me during our online class. No, yung virtual meeting natin. So, maraming salamat and I'll see you again in the next lesson. Bye!